Hi, this is Makona Spokane, the leader and the founder of Church Governance Solutions. Today, I want to deal with a very important topic, and I'm sure many people have been inboxing me and wanting me to speak about this topic. Very, very important topic indeed. And that is, how do you identify your God's calling over your life? How do you identify God's calling over your life? Many people are actually confused about this, and they are struggling to really identify what is God's calling. And some people are actually starting to confuse also talents and God's calling, and therefore people are struggling to identify the assignment of God in their lives. And I want to speak about this for that reason, because that will actually help many. And I hope some of you are actually sitting and listening to us as we deal with this topic, which is very important to deal with. The first thing that I want to mention, that is one certain element as well of being able to identify your calling of God upon your life, is when you start to develop strong passion or a strong drive for certain area of service. When you start to develop a drive or a passion for a certain area of service, you find yourself, you want to just do this, and you just want to do this for people. For an example, there are people that are actually called and actually anointed for giving, and with a gift of giving as well. Therefore, God uses them to give. These are the people that are not comfortable in just giving willy-nilly. They are actually giving where it impacts the most. People like that. So people that would identify that this is a drive, and every time when they need to give to someone or to need to give in a place, they don't have two minds about it, because this is a passion that they have. And they will do their best in giving more than everybody else. Even when everybody else has given, they'll still continue giving, because for them, this is a passion that they have. For them, this is the drive that they have. And this is actually the service that God has put upon their lives. And there are many other aspects that I may talk about, but I'm not going to really dwell into that. I'm just giving an example of the passion that you have. Maybe it's time as an individual to identify, what are you passionate about? What is that that drives you? What is that makes you to tick as an individual? Because that may be actually speaking to the calling of God in your life. You may not be aware of that. There are some of you who are passionate about taking care of children. Some of you are having such a drive and passion of taking care of widows, people that have lost husbands. And some of you are actually passionate about dealing with marriages. For instance, it pains you to see marriages breaking down. And therefore, it really makes you to really feel passionate. You feel you having the drive. And that drive is actually equal to none, because there's nobody who's having the passion like you in this regard. So this is one way of identifying the calling of God in your life. Secondly, development of hatred towards a certain way of operation. So now this is the opposite, an exact opposite of the first one. So in this case, you're not developing passion. Rather, you're developing an antagonistic spirit or hatred about a certain way of doing things. You develop passion or hatred against certain things. Like, let me give an example. As Church Governance Solutions, for us to identify where God has called us, we have realized that we were so passionate about godly order in the house of the orderly God. And secondly, we had so much hatred to disorder in the house of the Lord. So I don't know if you see that. So we were passionate about restoring order in the house of the orderly God, but also when it comes to places where there's no order, when it comes to places where everything is upside down, it actually develops a hatred to an extent that at some stage, if I may share to you this, that I used to stand up, even in churches where I'm not invited, to actually speak to the pastor and advise them about how they can do things better. So I would actually have a meeting with the pastor. I'll call the pastor and advise them on how they can operate better. Remember, it's in a church that maybe I just attended conference. I'm not even a minister there. I'm not even a guest speaker there. But I've attended this particular conference, and I observe things that are disorderly. I observe things that are not of God, that are causing confusion in the house of the Lord. And that pains me. And that, because I've got a hatred of that, and generally what I would do is I would later give a call to the pastor, organize a meeting with him, and have a chat with him. And I know some of the pastors are repelling me when I speak to them about that, and they're asking, who are you? Who do you think you are? And some of them are embracing, are happy about being advised. And that's very key. For me, it fulfills me that I've addressed some issues that are of disorder in the house of the living God, because my passion is to see order in the house of the living God. The other thing for you to identify your calling is identified and assisted by a mentor in an area of service. So in other words, something that is identified by your mentor. Your mentor may identify that you are a great preacher, may identify that you're having potential to become a great preacher based just on your knowledge of the word, your knowledge of how to articulate the word, your knowledge of how to express the word more with more clarity and succinctly in a way that everybody understands. And then you find that your mentor or maybe your leader in the church where you're submitting in may identify this. And as they identify this, they start actually getting closer to you, shaping up this gift that they see in you. It may have not shown up yet, but the potential is the one that the mentor sees. And then the mentor comes closer to you and starts shaping you and start assisting you and mentoring you towards fulfillment of that particular service. Now, why I emphasize the issue of service is because the calling of God is about service to the people. So the calling of God is not what people think, that is only about preaching. Now, the calling of God is about the people that you're preaching to. So in other words, that is the reason why we're having many pastors that are called, but with different callings, because others are called to Zoom specifically on children. Others are called specifically to Zoom on women only. Some, like us, we Zoom on churches and church leaders and pastors. And that's very important. And I must emphasize that when you start to Zoom in a certain area, God uses you more because you become like a fish in water in that particular area. So this is very, very important that we emphasize that. The other way to identify your calling of God inside your life is God's visitation through sometimes dreams, and some of you, God has visited you through visions and many different things that you might have encountered. You've encountered God directly. And some of you would say that, and I believe strongly that God can do that. We have seen when God appeared in a vision to Moses, and that when he appeared to Moses in a vision, there was a burning bush that was actually not burning when he came closer. And that was a vision. That was not a dream. And we know that God can speak through dreams like he has done through Joseph as well in the book of Genesis chapter 37. So this is very important that we emphasize the fact that God can call you through dreams. God can call you through visions as well. So please just be sensitive, be aware, and be have a spiritual ear to listen to God, and be able also to articulate when God visits you that this is God. The other thing is discovery of true self from the Word of God. That's another way to find who you are in the Word of God. And when you find the true self in the Word of God, that becomes very, very important. And many people will tell you that they are calling in God. They actually discovered themselves in the Word of God, who they are. And when they discover themselves who they are in the Word of God, they start actually serving people in that area. And they start acting in that area as well and putting more activities in that area. And we've seen success in this regard. So I'm mentioning this because there are some of you who would say, I've discovered myself in the Bible. I've discovered myself in the Word of God. The Word of God has actually become vividly to speak to me, for me to see who am I in the kingdom. And that's the beginning of your calling. And some have actually experienced that in their lives. The other thing is direct audible voice from God himself. And we know that from biblical perspective, that God spoke to people like Jeremiah. We know that God spoke to people like Joshua in Joshua chapter 1. We know that God spoke literally to people like Moses and several times in the desert, in Mount Sinai. And God has spoken to Moses clearly. God has spoken to many other people in the Bible that you might actually experience. People like Saul, who was walking to Damascus, that God spoke to him and struck him with a lightning and spoke a word in him that was audible to him. And it may not be audible to others that were around him, but to him, it was audible voice from God. And I want to say that even you, God may call you through audible voice that you may hear clearly. And it may not be heard by other people, but you hear it clearly. And I want to emphasize that be sensitive as well. Be ready to hear God speaking to you. If he does speak to you audibly, good luck. And that's very powerful as well. And may the good Lord bless you as God speaks to you. Finally, a doubtful sense confirmed by prophetic word. There are times where you're feeling like something. You're feeling like, I feel like I'm sensing this, and so on. And as you feel that, you are doubtful whether it can be God or not. And in many times, many of you have experienced that. And generally, you'll realize that if it is God, God will go further to confirm it. And when God confirms it, he will confirm it with different other aspects, either through dreams, he will confirm it maybe with visions as well, but also he may confirm it with prophetic word from somebody, where somebody will come and speak to you, a prophetic word, and that prophetic word will be confirming that which God has spoken to you. I must emphasize this point as well, that many people have actually lost to understand how prophetic works. Because prophetic word should be a confirmation to you. It should actually not urge you to do something that you've never heard from God before. It cannot come as new to you. Because when a prophetic word comes as new to you, generally, many people start applying their own minds. And if you prophesy upon somebody, that person should not be surprised. In real sense, those people would have heard from God, and that must be a confirmation. And that's very key. And I'm emphasizing this because many of you may not be aware of this. And you receive from bogus preachers outside there, you receive from bogus prophets that come with gimmicks and lie to you about things. And you believe and you shout and scream, I receive. And sometimes you receive demonic forces and powers by saying, I receive, instead of actually looking at this so-called prophecy and check if there's a confirmation, it is a confirmation or not. So it must not surprise you. And I want to emphasize that it should be a confirmation from the Lord. I want to end up here today. Your host, Maikona Spokane, and I'm happy that you've sat and listened to us, and I hope you've learned quite a bit out of this. I want to urge you once more to go to our YouTube channel under Maikona Spokane, and please listen to our teachings there, and that would help you. And please also press the notification button, the bell on it, and it will actually notify you of the videos that we've just posted. So may the good Lord bless you and allow me to say cheers for now.